Welcome. I'm here with Jennifer Yen, villainous actress, a founder, mom, and mompreneur. She started her career playing a villainess in Power Rangers TV show. After being on the TV show, she came up with a business idea, which we'll hear about a little bit today. Since then, has started another company, had a daughter, and figures how to balance everything while still being able to build businesses. So appreciate you being here, Jen.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
So I know you're in LA and you guys are still on lockdown. So how has the family been? How have you been handling everything?
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. My entire team is working from home. I mean, I come to the office every day just for a little bit of structure and sanity. And my family's doing good. Everybody's healthy, thankfully. And we feel very fortunate.
So is the lockdown affected your business? I know that you're a direct consumer, so it probably hasn't affected too much of sales, or maybe it has. But tell me a little bit about how it's affected the business.
Yeah, I think absolutely it's affected our business, whether it's like from a team collaboration standpoint or even growth. I mean, yes, we have been largely direct to consumer on Amazon for my first brand, Purlisse, which is, it's direct to consumer. We're on Amazon. And so we actually had plans to expand into Riley Rose, into more Morphe stores, but that has been put on hold. And then my second brand, Yensa, it's just been around for 2 years. It has been direct to consumer, but we just launched on March 8th on QVC, which is great because it's another medium of direct to consumer, but more TV. And then they stopped having guests on. So that kind of has slowed down our momentum, but we are about to go on, with any great companies, iconic companies, you have to learn to reinvent. So they have learned to adapt to the situation, to our crisis by putting their guests on Skype. So I'm going to be on QVC via Skype with a host live in a few weeks.
Oh, that's very cool. Very cool. And I know a lot of companies try to figure out how to get on QVC. It's been able to launch a lot of brands. Was that a difficult thing to attain? Was it something you were working on for a while? Did it kind of fall on your lap? How'd that happen?
Yes. Yes. QVC is they're a great company. They're a great platform. They're great for storytelling. So I think that there's probably several ingredients that makes a partnership with QVC successful, because not all brands are suited for QVC, because QVC is about having a strong founder, a founder story, and then the founder being able to go on to TV and educate consumers about the products, but more telling stories like, okay, why did I start this? Why is this product different? And I think that the origins of the brand is really, really important for QVC and the founder. So like their platform is about entertainment, education, and engagement. And because it is TV, so you have to have those elements be successful.
Well, you're like the perfect person for that, because how you founded the story, why you founded the story, and how you kind of tied it into your heritage too, I think is a really interesting story to tell. Can you just talk a little bit about, you're an actress, successful in it, the villainess in Power Rangers, and an experience you had there actually led you to founding your first business. Can you just briefly talk through that experience? Because I think that's what's going to resonate really well for you on QVC, and probably part of the reason that they wanted you there.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there's two origin stories for Purlisse, one for Purlisse and one for Yensa. I'll start with Purlisse because right after college, I became an actress, and one of my first acting roles was playing Vipra on Power Rangers as an evil villainess. So with that came 16 hours of heavy, dramatic makeup. So, I mean, I was under makeup for an hour and a half a day with the eyelashes and everything, doing contouring like before it was like a thing. And so within 6 months, my skin was wrecked. And this was in 2000. So I developed like rosacea, psoriasis, adult acne. My skin became very sensitive. And at the time, there was not, I couldn't find a product that was natural and that was infused with science too. So I tried the luxury high-end brands. They were too aggressive for me, but then like the natural products, they weren't effective and they weren't hydrating enough. And sometimes they would irritate my skin even more. So I always believed in, Asian beauty rituals, because growing up, my grandmother would always have brewed white tea or black tea. And she would use it as an antiseptic. And she would have it at room temperature because my brothers and I were like really rowdy and rambunctious. And when we get a scratch or a cut, she would actually use that instead of alcohol or hydrogen peroxide to kind of clean out bacteria or any of our cuts. So I knew that tea had really great antiseptic properties. And then also soy milk, and then Blue Lotus. My grandmother would make soy milk. We would drink it. She washed her face with it. So we have a 4-in-1 Blue Lotus cleanser that has soy milk in it for Purlisse. And then, so when I founded Purlisse, this was over like 12 years ago. It was so hard. You know, Asian beauty was not seen as like something like no one knew, not a lot of people knew about it. And so I wanted to create an Asian inspired brand with these ingredients rooted from my heritage, but I also wanted to have European skin technology, because at the time my chemist, he was Turkish French and he studied in Paris. And so he brought in, he fused a lot of these Asian ingredients with European.
Yeah, talk me through a little bit about that process, right? Because I think people might have an idea for a business and they might have a sense of going, well, this could work, but they don't have a chemistry background. They have no idea how to do cosmetics or build cosmetics. And you all of a sudden had an idea, you kind of tied it to your grandmother going, this could work. But still, where do you even get compounds from? Where do you even learn this? Like, how did you go figure out? Because it's not like you just white labeled something. You truly innovated a new product. How did you go about trying to become somebody, or at least finding resources to actually innovate a new cosmetic product?
So that is a great question. I think that for me, it was many pain points that I had, 'cause I had really sensitive skin. And also I was a beauty enthusiast. I always loved beauty products. It was, I was raised with my aunt, my grandmother, mom really taking care of their skin, always encouraging me to take care of my skin. Starting from the age of 12 and 13, I started wearing moisturizer. And
right.
yeah, so I think it's definitely a collection of my experiences, and then going from, you know, when I say I had really bad skin, people who knew me from before, they're like, no, you didn't. You're right, I didn't. I had normal skin, and then I went from that to having really, really problematic skin. So of course it took a toll on my confidence. And I think that's when I went all out and trying all sorts of different products. And I think that gave me an edge, because I had already naturally, through suffering through bad skin, I had tried so many products, and I realized what was working, what didn't work. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. If you're a woman, you would understand. Okay, how does it feel? Is it heavy? Does it bind into my skin properly? And does it mesh well with my foundation? And then if there is an SPF, is it going to leave a flashback? So what I mean by that was, when I would go to auditions all the time, I knew it was important to wear SPF, right? So that's like an anti-aging like know-how now, but I was doing it way back because of my mother. And so what I noticed was they would take a Polaroid, because they, you know, just like a quick shot, and my face would look gray. And I was like, what is going on? But you can't really see it. But it was a sunscreen that was making me look ashy and gray under my foundation. So I would have to go and mix like 4 different formulas, so I wouldn't get that white buildup and that white flashback when I would go on audition. So when I created
so you were actually doing that, kind of mixing things together, trying to figure out how to do it? That's awesome.
Yes, not with my practice time, but with different products. And then so when I went to my chemist, I was like, hey, you know, when we develop this, like, it has to be moisturizing. It has to, well, like, we can't have any peel off. So sometimes there was peel offs. Like when you put on moisturizing, you put foundation, the product would start peeling. I'm like, we can't have peel off, and this has to have an SPF 30, because that is the minimum you need to protect your skin from the sun. And then it needs to be moisturizing, but lightweight, so it's not heavy. And then the foundation has to look good on top of moisturizer SPF 30. And this is like years and years and years ago. So then, you know, we worked really hard on that. So it was all of these pain points that really got me to go into the lab with the chemist and say, okay, this is what we need. You know, I think it's very hard if you were to say, hey, Jeremy, you're a chemist. You're like, hey, I want the most amazing face cream. Okay, well, what does that mean? That's very broad, right? So I had to say, hey, it can't have any parabens, can't have any minerals, it can't have sulfates, it can't have synthetic fragrance, and all of these things I
So
listed.
I love how you kind of, well, experimented with other brands and kind of mixing through, but you knew exactly what you wanted. You tried and back and forth on it. And then, so you could easily be able to describe what you were looking for from chemists, but it sounds like you did your research on why it was coming up gray. You realized it was the SPF at a certain thing that was blocking it. And you realized, okay, how can I minimize it? So you kind of had a passion of trying to figure this stuff out on your own. So you were able to better articulate it to the chemist to be able to come up with it. But, you know, and I want to get into a little bit more about Yensa too, because I know we're going through just your first brand on it. But talk me through a little bit about that jump, because you started going through experimenting. You found a chemist going through it, but you're already a successful actress. You're already doing well and you have your own career. Why are you deciding to go be an entrepreneur and run your business and leave that? You're at this point, you don't have children, you know, and a lot of people are going to LA to be an actress. You're kind of doing what you're supposed to do, and kind of what made you decide to pivot from what some people say is a dream job as a kid to wanting to be and run and start your own cosmetics company? Just talk me through a little bit about that, and then we'll kind of fast forward to Yensa.
So, you know, I think I got lucky, and I found, you know, success like really fast and early. But then when I got off of Power Rangers, I realized how hard it was. I was going through auditions. I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I realized really quickly that I had no control in this industry at that time, you know. And then it was a lot of waiting around, and then I did get like guest star roles in shows, and then within 2 days, like after wearing heavy makeup, my skin would be bad, and it was just a lot of, oh, my skin is bad for 2 weeks, and then a lot of waiting around, a lot of rejection too. So then I was like, you know, I can't live like this, and it was from a pain point to being frustrated too with where I was at, and then I was like, you know what, you're right, I don't have kids, I'm gonna do this now while I'm still young. I can take on risks. And I really, really believed in it, because I really, really believed the market needed a natural, Asian inspired, but still have a science skincare driven brand. And now you see it a lot.
Yeah, but you were early on to it. So when you made that move and decided to go away from being an actor to running a cosmetics company and starting at that point, did you see any parallels from being an actor to running a business at all in those first early years?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You know, I always say acting really prepared me to become an entrepreneur, because I want to say one is a ton of rejection at first. And well, always, you know, everybody still faces rejection. Two is you better be self-motivated, because no one is there telling you every day you have to do this. No one is micromanaging you. And you know, as an actor, right, you have to look good. You have to be healthy. You have to like go to acting school or acting classes, so you are fresh and with your acting skills. And then you have to keep your body fit, because a lot of it is physical. And you have to eat healthy, and you have to have the right mindset, because acting, it can take a toll on you, because it is a lot of rejection. And I think that's number two. Number three, I want to say, is knowing how to present and sell yourself. And four,
I love that.
competitive.
You know, people always ask me out of college, they're saying, you know, what should I do right out of college? What should be a first job? And what you described as an actor is usually when I give people advice, I said, you know, you should get a sales job. You need to be able to deal with rejection. You need to be able to communicate effectively with everybody. You're going to have to be self-motivated, because you're not getting a salary. You're going to have to work on commissions. And so a lot of the what you just shared was why, and the skills you learned from being an actor to parallel over, is exactly why I tell people to get into sales. Because as I look at attorneys, dentists, or I went to see John Legend play the other day, or I guess it was not the other day, earlier last year. But he's selling his wine to us while we're going there. I'm like, this guy's in sales, and he's selling his wife's cookbook. And I'm sitting there going, you know, he's a musician, but he's turned into a salesman in a certain role. And so a lot of the skill sets you learned as an actor clearly has led well to your success in business as you've kind of built things up at this point. Can you talk a little bit about, as you started the business, one of the things people always wonder is you took the jump, you took the leap of faith, you clearly had a passion behind what you were doing, you had a real desire and felt like there was a real need for the cosmetics you were coming up with, for that natural brand that fit all the different check boxes you had. But it's scary on how you fund that, right? And you were early on in your actor career, so it's not like you probably had all this time to build up all this wealth.
Yeah.
What did you do? Did you go to investors? Did you bring in partners? How'd you go about getting started here?
Well, so this was 2005 when I had the idea, and 2006 when I really started, going to trade shows and packaging shows and really started wanting to execute on this, right? And we didn't launch it till 2008, but that's how long it took when you don't know what you're doing. And so,
I love that you took 3 years doing your normal day job to make sure this is what you wanted to do before you launched too, which is exactly what you're supposed to do.
No, because it was that hard. I mean, this is the time when there was not a lot of information, like there was not LinkedIn, there was no social media, and the idea of angel investors, like no one knew. I mean, the whole investment, like I know there was VCs and private equity, but for a first-time entrepreneur, it was very limited resources to learn about it or to even have access to capital. So what I did was, so I had a little bit of, money from acting, not enough. And then my uncle at the time gave me a small loan. And then what I did, which I don't advise, was I had a condo, and I actually, and this was, 2006 and 2007 when there was all this rage with mortgages, so credit was very easy. So I actually took out a line of credit on my condo, which I don't advise for first-time entrepreneur. Now it's a little different because I know what I'm doing and I know what kind of risks I'm taking, And so by the time when I think back, because things can only make sense looking backwards, like Steve Jobs said, is like, here I was, first time, I didn't know anybody in the beauty industry. I didn't have any corporate experience. I didn't work for a beauty company. And I actually never worked for a company, period, except for my retail jobs prior, in college, in high school. And then you're taking already a huge risk by starting a business, but you're also taking on another risk of taking out debt on your only home. Yeah. And I had a few amazing advisors who I still adore, and they were like, Jen, please don't do that. I was like, why? It's gonna work, And then, so yeah.
But your timing is impeccable too with 2008. Great timing.
I know. So it worked for 10 months. I got my company launched, but then came October 2008. When I tell you that we were on a constant growth trajectory, and then literally in October 2008, if you saw it spiked, it just dropped, and it never ever went back up. And so we were at Henry Bendel, C.O. Bigelow, Fred Siegel's, Beauty and Maze, JD's Cosmetics during this time. And all these stores, with the exception of C.O. Bigelow, is they're all gone. And so I lost as a result. That's why I don't advise it.
Right. Well, it's good advice. But, the part I love is that you took a risk on yourself. You decided to invest in yourself. And clearly, as much as in hindsight, it probably wasn't the best strategy. You own the company, and you've been able to still have it for well over a decade. So, you had some great experience on the entrepreneurship side. Any advice that you would give to entrepreneurs? Because I think you mentioned it beforehand, that you didn't understand VCs or angel investors back there. Entrepreneurship wasn't real sexy back in the 2000s. It's turned into sexy now, where people like freelancing. I think with social media and everything like that, people are trying to think that it's the cool thing to be able to do. And so a lot of people have ideas and want to make the jump, but it's not for everybody. So, you borrowed money, you hit 2008, everything spiked, but you figured out how to weather through it. Any thoughts on why entrepreneurship for yourself or others, or what people should be thinking about?
Yeah, that is such a great question. I mean, that is such a great question. I think, when I think back about entrepreneurship, I think about my parents who are immigrants, right? And I know it's so glamorized now, but when I look, like when I think about entrepreneurship, there's nothing glamorous about it. My parents came here as immigrants. They worked at a restaurant for 10 years, my aunt's restaurant. My mom went from an accounting job in Asia, in Taiwan, to becoming a waitress and a dishwasher at my aunt's restaurant. And then she ended up opening her own restaurant. But I saw it all because my brothers and I would work there, like sometimes at nights and definitely on the weekends. Like there was no weekend where we were just chilling out. We were always at the restaurants. So that's entrepreneurship. And that's self-finance entrepreneurship. So when I think about entrepreneurship, there's nothing glamorous about it. And when I started doing it, there was nothing glamorous about it. And I think that it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of sacrifice, but it's so rewarding. Don't get me wrong. It's awesome. But I think on the flip side, 50% of it is because like I know that people love to talk about success, and I love to see it. I love to talk about it. I love being inspired by it. But there is also another side to it that I think that entrepreneurs really do need to understand. It is a ton of self-sacrifice. And I want to say to some level, because there's a Chinese saying, like, there's a lot of suffering involved. And I always say, you need to suffer through the process. Like, you need to work through the process. You need to do the work. And it may take years. Like, it took years and years and years for us to get to where we are. And we're not even where I want to be, like not even close. So, that's the hard part about it. And yes, there is going to be failures. I just told you a story about, even though I'm still here standing, but there's like 2 or 3 pivotal moments where I failed,
So tell me what was your favorite failure, if you think about it? If you're looking back at your career here, what was your favorite failure?
I mean, it was so painful and so soul crushing, but I want to say now is probably during the financial crisis, because I was still young, but I was also didn't really have in my lifetime, besides seeing my parents struggle as a young girl, but like after high school and college, everything was breezy. I was like, oh, I want to be an actress. I did that. And then, oh, I think I want to become an entrepreneur. I did that until the crisis. And like, because when you're young, you don't know what you don't know. But when you're older, you're at least wise enough, like, I don't know that. I don't know, like, but you're just like, you just think, because if you haven't experienced crisis, you don't know there can be a ton of problems. And so looking back, I didn't know how to budget. It's like, I didn't know how to actually, take a plan, break it down, budget it, and really execute on, the production side, the marketing side, the sales side, and then the budgeting side. And I honestly, so I failed and I crashed and I lost everything. And I pulled back from the market for 1.5 years, which a lot of people don't know. When we came back on the market in 2012, it was a whole new world. And so people think that Purlisse is a digitally native brand. And it has been for more than 5 years, but we didn't start out that way. We started out in retail.
Yep. Well, it's interesting. You talked about your parents kind of starting out waitressing, and then ultimately you saw them in running businesses in the restaurants and that. And my father, my mom and dad got married. They did a shotgun wedding, 18, 19 years old, had me, and my dad had to drop out of school and started selling cars. My mom stayed home with the kids, but he worked his way up in the dealerships, ultimately owning car dealerships. And so I grew up the same way with you, as I was working in the business. College, I went to school right down the street, was working at the car dealerships. And I think that kind of gave me this entrepreneurial bug, but it made me kind of learn and understand how much goes into building a business. Yeah. You're a mom now. You have a 6-year-old, 5-year-old. How old's your kid?
Oh, she's 5.
5. So you have a 5-year-old now. How are you balancing being a single mom? And I read you were a single mom, so I don't want to call you out in case you're not. I'm a
parenting mom, right? So I do have support. I'm a co-parenting mom. So I don't have full time, so that, I have support from her dad. I have my mom, my dad helped me when she was younger. So that gave me support. And those were critical years for me to rebuild Purlisse. And so, and which enabled me to start my second company, right? So I do have support. So I think that for me, and then now with, the whole world, having to homeschool and God, it is really hard. My answer would probably been different, maybe pre-pandemic, like, okay, they're in school,
Right.
or, if they're of an age where they go to school. But I think, right now is having, in this moment during COVID-19 is yes, we're staying at home, but you still need to follow structure. I was 1 month behind. I wish I would have executed 3 days after, but I sat around and I was like, I was lost. You go from going 100 miles an hour to like screeching like a stop. So I was lost, and I just was like, what do I do? For the first like 3 or 4 days, I think she's watching a lot of YouTube. I'm like, no, this can't happen. So then I put her, now I'm on a really strict schedule, and so is she. So coming to the office every day by myself really helps me. But
Yep.
I think one is having a guideline, a schedule. Maybe you follow it 90, 80%, but at least it gives you direction. But that's life, right? If you want to balance.
Well, it's funny you say the pandemic. We did the same thing, and I struggle with it too. Right off the bat, I was like, you know what? I'm just letting the kid watch the iPad. I'm working. I don't care. And then after a little bit, you're sitting there going, all right, I got to help structure this. And the schools weren't ready yet to homeschool, and we didn't ever signed up to being a homeschooler. So that first month was just extremely difficult to be able to get in the rhythm to be able to do. And I think I hated seeing on social media some of these parents that just stepped right up like day one and were like these awesome homeschool teachers. I felt so guilty, and I'm sitting there, this is BS. This guy, they got to be making this up just to look good on social media, because I can't imagine doing this.
Yeah.
So, you got to see your parents early on. Is there anything you start thinking about on how you're going to help your daughter think about business and being an entrepreneur at all? Have you ever thought about that, or she's still too young? It's kind of even hitting your radar.
All the time. I think about all the great things my parents did, but I also think about some of the things that they lacked. And I think that for my daughter, I always teach her about finances, about budgeting. We have she has an allowance. She gets $1 a week for making her bed and brushing her teeth. And so sometimes I don't give it to her like that week. I kind of just maybe accumulates. But she has 3 bank accounts, like piggy banks. She has one for saving, and I learned this from my girlfriend, one for spending and one for gifting, right?
Very cool.
And right now the largest one is savings because she doesn't have much, and I explain that to her. But I tell her the concept of sales. Like, okay, do we really need this, and do we not? Because I just think that it's really important at a young age for me to, at moments that are genuine, authentic, for me to teach her something. Because I think my parents, they were always at a restaurant, working at the restaurant. So they didn't have the time or the energy. They would come home at 10 and we already be in bed, and they would be asleep by the time we went to school, and they would work Saturday and Sunday. So it was my grandmother, who was already 2 generations removed from American society, culture. So we didn't, so everything we learned was sort of on our own and watching our parents. So I do all the time. And, I make sure that I don't coddle her, and that she's somewhat motivated. And I explain to her the risk of not focusing and doing your best. And I talk to her like an adult. So what was like,
well, no, that's awesome. I love the third. I think that's a really great way. And I love that you added giving into that, because I don't think that, we teach our kids to save oftentimes, and we're not adding that to a piece of it. And I love that you're adding that as part of it. I think it's a great learning and takeaway. And I've caught myself doing things that I tell my daughter business models. Like, so we go into a restaurant and I try to explain to her how they're making money. Or all of a sudden we go into a store and we're buying a doll, and understand who's owning that and making money there. She gets it maybe a third of the time, but I'm trying to get her to understand that there's all these different career options. Because when I got out of school, you go to college, and I graduated in 2000. And then, you know, I thought, okay, I'm supposed to go get a W-2 job that I'm working, you know, the normal hours. And I didn't think about all these unique opportunities that are out there that I think, you know, kids now that are graduating, if there is jobs, they're thinking it a little bit more. But I want her to realize that you can be successful in anything you want. I love how you've gotten yourself into something you're already passionate about that ties into your heritage too. It allows you to make you feel like work's not work, even when it is really stressful. And you've been able to kind of reinvent yourself in a sense of from the actress to this part too, where you also, it sounds like, saw a new opportunity when you started Yensa a couple of years ago. And so when one of the things I found is most successful people are always researching something new. They're curious about something new. And that leads either to a new business opportunity or a way to innovate their existing business or finding a new hobby. Can you just talk through about, you already had a successful business going, what makes you launch new brand, new company? And what was it that curiosity that got you to actually do that?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So a lot of the feedback that I got from a lot of buyers and was that Purlisse was a great line. It's young, but it didn't really tell my story of my heritage, who I am. And so I started thinking about it. And so my last name Yen in Chinese actually means color and face. And so, yeah, I know. So like,
did you realize that when you started the company?
Yeah, and I was like, what? Like, yeah, I mean, I always knew my last name means color. When I looked into it, it actually means color and face. So I was like, oh my goodness.
Awesome.
I was like, oh my goodness. So I knew I didn't want to create a line called Jennifer Yen because I was not going to do that. But I was like, but I have an even better. I'm like, I'm going to call the brand Yensa. It literally means color in Chinese, right? Yensa. And then we brought that, you know, to my team at QVC, and they're like, oh my God, this is great because, you know, we had a lot of great momentum on Purlisse. We get a lot of press, but the feedback was, hey, and like I said, that's what I'm saying. Not all brands are right for QVC. I could go on to QVC and tell the best story, but Purlisse is not the right brand for TV, right? So then Yensa it looks like me, it reflects me without saying my name. And so what happened was when I was pregnant, my mother insisted on taking care of me for a month. So this is a very important part after a woman gives birth in Asian culture is there's this period where it's inspired by traditional Chinese medicine called 坐月子, where the mother sits out for 1 month and she eats superfoods. So my mother was cooking me these superfoods like black rice, black sesame, black tea, black seaweed, and chicken soup. And so I'm sitting there and by the way, I'm like 12 years older at this point, right? From when I started, you know, and I was like 10 years older, and I was like, okay, I'm definitely in a different generation. My skin concerns are different. At this point, I needed more coverage on my skin. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to infuse these black superfoods into a strong coverage complexion product, but also have SPF in it because, you know, that's what everything I need right now. And so that's when I got the idea is I want to create a brand that is superfood science meets color complexion, targeting Generation X. Because during this time, there was even Purlisse now is more millennial and Gen Z because it's been on social media. But I felt like Generation X, which is sort of like my generation, I'm on the other end, but still I'm concerned that they were kind of being ignored during this the rise of social media. Now, everybody's getting older, right? So it's all the millennials and Gen X are starting to be concerned about the same things, about premature aging, sun damage, age spots. And so, but I knew I wanted Yensa to be on QVC because it was so imperative. I had a platform to tell stories. So we launched with Ipsy first. Ipsy is our online subscription sampling and glam bag company where they're digital and they create amazing content. We started with them first, and then we launched on QVC. So Yensa is largely direct to consumer, but one is direct to consumer on digital, one is direct to consumer on TV. So that's how it transpired.
Yep. No, and I love that you understood the storyline behind it, you know, and and well, I own a couple companies, but they're sales companies, and there's sales reps in each one. But we always talk about story selling, and being able to tell the right story allows people to kind of buy in more to the brand. And so you were able to create a product that you believed in that kind of tied in everything, but you also understood the story behind the product would help actually market the product well. Right. And clearly it worked on the QVC side. Well, I got one last question for you, and because I know there's a bunch of stuff I already got out of the conversation already, but what was the most memorable day of your career? Now, that could be your career as an actor, that could be your career as an entrepreneur and a business person, but I'm curious on the most memorable day of your career.
My career, most memorable day of my career. Okay.
It could be something. Okay, you got one? Okay, good. I was going to try to buy you time a little bit there.
No. Well, okay. I think is when I started Purlisse, right? But we didn't have a store. So, and this is like 2008. So I remember I was just targeting CO Bigelow in West Village, right? It's this awesome store. It's been around for 180 years. Thomas Edison used to shop there. And Ian Ginsberg, the CEO and founder, I was just like, he was so hard to get a hold of, and everybody wants to get into. It's just this one awesome store that has amazing foot traffic, and they're very iconic. I just remember like calling him up, like him not taking my calls, and then emailing him, and he would never respond. And then when somebody told me, he's there on a Saturday, I was like, oh really? Okay, that's great. And then he actually. I was like, hey, is he in there? They're like, yeah. And they're like, hold on. I was like, okay. And I'm like, hey, and I got out of bed recently because it's Saturday morning. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, hey, it's Jennifer. Yeah, and I've been trying to call you. And he's like, okay. And then we were able to set a meeting in New York. And I was like, I'm on the next flight out. But that was my very, very first store. So it basically embodied, that moment I remember. And there's been a few moments, but that moment I remember was like all of my, like rejection doesn't bother me, because I literally had called him 20 times and emailed him, where
awesome.
you can't let it bother you, the rejection. And then, the ability to sell, the ability to think quick, like, oh my God, here's our insult. And then we were able to book a meeting, and I was there, and I got my products into CO Bigelow as our very first store. That was our very first store we got into. And so that's awesome. Memorable career. And then luckily there's been so many more after that,
No, but I love that. First, it's because it's early on where you're just trying to build a business. You needed a win that you can really just kind of hang your hat on and go there. But what I love about it more is that, most people that start a business, there's a book called The E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth.
Oh, yes.
And people come up with an idea, like you have the idea of this moisturizer, the different cosmetic products, but they don't understand all the other pieces that go along with launching a business. You're literally cold calling a powerful business owner that could be the entry point into you getting it. You didn't call them 20 times. You finally did some research, knew when to call them, how to position it, and then quickly jumped on any opportunity you got with that appointment. Yes. I think it's a very cool story, and it's quintessential of why you've been able to build a successful business and a successful company.
Thank you. I want to add to that, because there's another second important component I want to say. So, because right after that, the economy crashed along with retail, right? So then came all these opportunities, and this was the rise of social media, right? So the second most pivotal moment, and the reason why I'm here is the concept of novelty and embracing new ideas, right? So I saw a lot of brands, they try to go back and do the same thing over and over again. I'm like, well, we just got demolished in retail. All of our stores are gone. So I knew we couldn't do this. So in 2011 and 12, there was this little company called Ipsy, but now they're massive, right? So there were a subscription box, and then all of these veterans were saying, oh, well, why would anybody pay for samples? It doesn't make sense. You can Bloomingdale Nordstroms, but they forgot the idea of discovery and indie brands. And so we connected with Ipsy at the time, which is now a powerhouse. And they were like, well, we need samples. And these brands won't give us samples because they didn't believe in YouTube. And I can already see Twitter and YouTube and taken on a life, and then Instagram. I was like, no, well, we got a ton of samples. This is the time when I came back to market and all the stores shut, and I had all these products in the warehouse. They're like, oh, we need your products. I'm like, okay, well, I need a place for it. So I took on, we both took on a risk, Ipsy, and, it was partially out of need, but also like, okay, we kind of need a new direction, because whatever was happening pre-crisis is not working now, the financial crisis. So then when we did it, we realized how efficient and effective this model is to be able to get out like at the time, tens of thousands, now it's hundreds of thousands of samples in 1 month to all of these beauty enthusiasts who are ready to discover new products, right? And so because of that, we were able to reinvent Purlisse from a retail brand into a digitally native brand. You know what I mean? So
yeah, completely. And what's interesting is as I hear just reflecting back on the last 45 minutes we've been talking, you romanticize now about 2008 when it was really rough, right? But looking back, a lot of your learnings and your launchings were founded during this crisis where, you borrowed a bunch of money, all of a sudden sales went down, but you were able to see and create new opportunities that really launched your long term. Do you see any parallels right now? Obviously, we're in a different type of crisis now, but and it's hard to look while we're in the middle of it, right? It's hard to be able to see while in the middle. Now you could see that you saw social media on the rise. You saw an opportunity of being kind of the first direct to consumer with the partnership you put together. But, and I imagine if we do a call in 5 years from now, you'll talk about the different things that you were able to take advantage of and thought about right now. But now that we're in the midst of it, do you see any parallels back from 2008 now?
Absolutely. 100%. I mean, it's just, it's crazy. Yeah. Yes, I do. What is interesting is I remember 2008 because it's like so scarred, in my soul. And what I saw was like, wow, like people forget what happened. And like, I saw the crazy spending that was happening with like companies and just like people, like hyper consumerism. And I mean, not to say I was like, well, at some point this party is going to end,
Yeah.
And I know that it's like the ones who are over leveraged, like it's like whatever state you were in pre-COVID-19, the crisis just accelerated wherever you were, whoever you are, and I saw that because in 2000 I was really over leveraged. I didn't have anything of substance, and then so, yeah, I see that now where the rise of, digital and is, I think, going to have another reinvention. And I think businesses are going to have to think about, how do I touch people without really touching them? How do I touch my consumers without physically touching them? Because that's going to be different. Like samples aren't going to be allowed in stores even when they open, because there's going to be a hygiene problem with it. So I do think that digital is really important. And I think that any sort of entrepreneur who wants to get a consumer, I think that they should always think about direct to consumer first, because you just don't know what's going to happen, and yeah, I do see a lot of free, like a lot of credit. And then now it's like tightening the credit. It's like the same thing,
Well, what I think is nice to hear just from this conversation is for people that are trying to figure out, as their business revenue has dropped and they're wondering kind of when things are going to get back to normal, this is the time where people reinvent their businesses. This is the time where people look back in 3, 5, 10 years from now that it was the launch of their success. And I think if we can be able to, while you're in the midst of it, be able to kind of keep that in mind, that this is how you're going to end up getting this quantum level of growth, right, that you wouldn't have got if the party just kind of kept going. And you're able to kind of reinvent where it is. Because I think you're right that people are now, the marketplace has changed. And you talked about no samples, you talked about direct consumer. And I think you're spot on in the digitalization and direct consumer being going to be expedited in a level of change that was happening before. And I think in general, what I've been talking about with the pandemic is this process for companies and industries to change. It might have took 2, 3, 4 years for people to adapt. Is happening in 2 or 3, 4 months during this pandemic. And so you're able to get your company in a spot that might have took you a couple of years in a much faster way. And if you're able to just keep focused and realize you're going to have a stronger company coming out of this, I think you're going to start having the right mindset to figure out how to take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Jeremy, because some of the iconic companies were born and created out of harsh times. And like when I say that, you look at companies like Ipsy, for example. It was right after the reset, a few years after the recession. You know, I think right now, like it's just not time to sort of sit back. It's time to double down on working even harder and reinventing and like actually questioning every part of your business. You know, it's not time to like sit back. If you want to come out of this on the other side, you know.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And we got more time too. you got rid of traveling. You don't have to get ready as you used to when you had to go drive somewhere. So you got more time to do it. Yeah. Jennifer, this has been an awesome conversation. I literally have like 2 pages of notes that I kind of took going through it. I'm excited to kind of debrief and put it in the show notes. Where would people find you if they're looking for you individually as an entrepreneur, but also in your companies?
Yeah, thank you. So my personal Instagram is Jen Yen 1. That's JenYen, and then the number 1. And then Purlisse is Purlisse on all platforms, and that's purlisse.com. And then Yensa Beauty, which is Yensa Beauty on social media platforms, but on the website, it's Yensa.com.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. Hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Take care.
Thanks,
Stay
Jen.
healthy, everyone. Bye.
You too. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you for watching the Upreneur podcast, and don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and share this with anybody who you think needs to hear it.